When the U.S. Iran, the 3 Iranian nuclear sites, that was done to create to provoke some kind of retaliation against the United States. There's 40,000 troops in the region. There's aircraft carriers in the region. There's numerous bases. Obviously, U.S. CENTCOM was being run out of Qatar. 10,000 troops positioned there. Anyway, all right, let's get started. So obviously there was after the United States entered the war, right, by Israel, there was an inevitability that Iran was going to retaliate, most likely back at Israel, but also the United States of America. This is legally within the rights of Iran to do. It was illegal for the United States. Did I say that? No. Iran bombed Israel, but Iran was slated to also turn around and bomb U.S. bases in the region after the United States violated Iranian sovereignty once again. Whole ass, completely separate nation, for the record. We don't get to just bomb other countries. Not only do we just not get to bomb other countries. Oh, I said America bombed Israel. Sorry. When the U.S. bombed Iran, the 3 Iranian nuclear sites, that was done to create to provoke some kind of retaliation against the United States. There's 40,000 troops in the region. There's aircraft carriers in the region. There's numerous bases. Obviously, U.S. CENTCOM was being run out of Qatar. 10,000 troops positioned there. There's troops in Bahrain. There's troops in Syria, like 1,000, I think, or so. There are troops in Iraq. There's American troops all around, and there are plenty of opportunities. There's plenty of strike opportunities for Iran. But one of the things that I initially suspected and called out ahead of time was that given Iran's track record of restraint in this tit for tat, in this back and forth that was happening with Israel, and also in the limited response that took place when Donald Trump in his last tenure severely escalated and killed Qasem Soleimani, the famous Iranian head of the IRGC Quds force, like their special forces. When Donald Trump killed Qasem Soleimani in his first tenure, the Iranian retaliation was once again incredibly limited. And I think that the generals that were in Trump's ear this time around, on top of like the Israeli influence in this process, because it's pretty obvious that we are now letting Israel guide our foreign policy in the region. They're in the driver's seat, and they are running the show, right? This is these escalations that are happening. And no interest in negotiation whatsoever has always been Israel's most important policy. Iran is like the crown jewel that they want to take out in the region because it is a funder of all of these. It is a funder of all these resistance groups that resist against Israel. It goes against their ambition of doing this Greater Israel project, which is an exterminationist project. It's unfolding in Gaza right now, and it's happened in southern Lebanon in the past. And of course, for this reason, Iran being a sovereign nation state and being able to create like logistical supply chains in the entire region was a major issue for Israel's ambitions of developing a larger state of Israel, that's their goal. Right. So this obviously is against America's interests in the region as well, because America is aligned with Israel on this. Israel is an extension of American imperialism in the region, and Israel is an operating base for the United States of America, as I've said time and time again. It is an unsinkable aircraft carrier. It has its own espionage capabilities. It is it plays a very important role in all of our operations in the Middle East, a resource-rich region that we want to dominate and control. Obviously, considering the entire, considering the other Gulf nation states, Saudi Arabia and Qatar as well, and the UAE and Every other Gulf region, oil-rich nation state is completely in the pocket of the U.S. empire. Iran is the one that does not play ball. And for a very long time, the goal for America and Israel has been to basically either implement a puppet regime in Iran, as they had done so in the past, or why is everybody freaking out about the way I say Qatar? Shut the up. Why is this the major point here? Okay. Yeah, Olaf Berserker. I come here for the laughs. I know, brother. You're a real berserker. You're a real Nord, okay? You're a real white supremacist Nord, I promise. You are just like Vikings. You are just like the Vikings. Keep up the pillage. Keep up the pillage, big dog. Anyway, so that's how you pronounce it. But when America entered this conflict to strike at the a violation of numerous different international rules that were set in and of itself, because you can't just strike nuclear facilities just because you felt like it. In the midst of a denuclearization negotiation that was taking place, they did so because they were following through on Israel's ambition. Okay? This is Israel's goal. America's goal in the past was to try to use diplomacy against Iran. That was what Barack Obama did. And even in that diplomatic process, there were a lot of sanctions that they implemented on Iran in an effort to bully Iran into submission, to stop their nuclear ambitions dead in its tracks. But it was successful. It gives me no pleasure to report on this, considering that I'm not a big fan of Barack Obama. But Barack Obama's JCPOA agreement was actually a profoundly successful denuclearization agreement. Having said that, however, obviously Donald Trump, the first time when he became president, immediately geared by the hundreds of millions of dollars that he had gotten from the Adelsons, at the time it was Sheldon Adelson, and his close relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu, very quickly turned around and cast aside that denuclearization agreement. Iran still followed the denuclearization agreement, regardless of the fact that Donald Trump had actually cast it aside. And then Donald Trump added additional sanctions to the state of Iran, at which point they started because the real goal was never to stop the Iranian, the Islamic Republic from getting nukes. The real goal always has been regime change. The casus belli for regime change and the military action necessary to, in their minds, create either regime change or a failed state in Iran was by claiming that they had nukes, WMDs. A lot of Americans who are old enough remember the WMD memes from the Iraq War. They lied about Iraq having weapons of mass destruction, and they used that as a reason for why they had to go to war with Iraq. Now, of course, this came in the aftermath of 2 years of unlimited propaganda post 9/11. It was immediately after 9/11, so obviously people were a lot more invested into going to war, as opposed to doing this in 2025 in the ashes of the war on terror, where everybody understands that America lied to go to war with Iraq, and it was a major L for America in general, and it caused so much instability in the region and had tremendous impact. And it's deeply unpopular, so unpopular that Donald Trump literally ran against 2016 against Hillary Clinton for supporting the Iraq War and won. It's not working. The same meta is not really working unless you already have tremendous amounts of motivated reasoning to believe that Iran does have nukes and we have to blow them up. And there are some people who believe that, but clearly, judging by the latest YouGov poll that came out that I posted, 85% of the country does not want to go to war with Iran. 85% of the country. And the support for going to war with Iran is at like 5%. So what's spectacular about everything that has unfolded in this past week has been that, one, Israel is very clearly guiding the Middle Eastern policy at this point. Just they are in charge. They are holding the wheel, and we are doing everything for Israel. Okay, that's number one. Number two, there is no appetite for this, and it's so crazy to me because there's no appetite for it, and they're not even trying. They're not even trying to develop consent for it. They're basically saying, no, this is what it means. America first, baby. Iranians close to me say that the U.S. left the Obama agreement because Iran didn't let inspectors to all the facilities. No, that's not true. That's not true. Iran was completely in cooperation. How do you know that Iran complied with the JCPOA post-American withdrawal? Because Iran kept cooperating. with international authorities, including the International Atomic Agency, the Atomic Energy Agency. So that's the reason why they knew that they were cooperating. The International Atomic Energy Agency is supposed to be this independent body. 70% of their resources goes to Iran. They only are there to monitor Iran, okay? Having said that, however, they might actually leave the NPT now, for the record. And it seems to me like the Iranian Parliament's National Security Commission has approved the bill on the suspension with the cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency. Because of course they're going to do that. Why wouldn't they do that? Why wouldn't they build nukes now? You cannot stop nuclear proliferation by striking a country's nuclear bases that were designed to be deep underground, specifically to avoid exactly what is happening right now. If you wanted to actually get Iran to play ball and not have nuclear proliferation, you had to basically do what Barack Obama did. That was the only successful method, because they have scientists. Iran is an incredibly well-educated country. Contrary to what dumbass Americans think, Iran, it has a higher literacy rate than the United States of America. Iran is an incredibly educated country, a much more educated country than the United States of America. Someone said cap. This is my favorite, when I say basic facts about a country and people go, nah, that doesn't sound right. Okay, look it up on your own then. What are you supposed to do? Kill every single scientist in the country? Is that what you're going to do? I mean, if we're up to Israel, that is what they would do. In any case, before we get to the stupid ass Hakeem Jeffries Democrat response, non-response, I just wanted to I know that there's a lot of extra attention and extra eyeballs on this process right now because people are confused, and I wanted to give them like a quick refresher, quick background on this history. America and England destabilized Iran initially because Iran democratically elected a moderate social democrat who wanted to basically keep their own oil, to have sovereignty over their own oil. And England, instead of turning around and saying, all right, you know what, British Petroleum, we are going to play ball. This is your oil after all. We'll design a 50-50 split for the revenue. Instead of saying 50-50 revenue split seems like a good idea. That's fair. Fair is fair, right? They said, no, we're only going to give you 10% of the revenue still. How dare you do this? And then they implemented a coup. And then they installed the British puppet, the Shah. And the Shah was so unpopular, and the Iranians were so upset with their with this severe setback on their own sovereignty that they obviously retaliated. And there was a revolution that took place in Iran against the Shah, a revolution that was backed by the socialist forces, social democratic forces, popular mobilization, and of course, the Islamist forces as well. And the Ayatollahs came into power. People were understandably very upset. Okay? They were understandably very upset at Western involvement and Western destabilization. Took 30 seconds to Google. Iran's literacy rate is 89%. America's 79%. I know I covered it the other day as well. Having said that, that's important to understand why there's so much resentment towards Western destabilization in the country, even if they hate the Ayatollah, okay? There are plenty of secular Iranians that don't like the Ayatollah, that despise the repressive forces of the Islamic Republic on their own domestic affairs. But you know what they hate even more? When they get by Israel, when they get by America, when they are fearful that they're going to be pushed into war. Okay, no matter how many diaspora Iranians that say, I am Persian and I love the Shah, please put the Shah in charge. Iranians in Iran that's not like that popular of a sentiment. Does it exist in Iran as well? Of course. Of course that kind of sentiment exists in Iran as well. It's just nowhere near as overwhelmingly popular as it does here in the West. There are royalists in Iran as well. There were royalists initially in Iran as well. The CIA activated them and used them to put the Shah in charge initially. In any case, my point is that is the reason why that is the reason why America's actions and Israel's actions against Iran is most likely galvanizing and drawing up more support for the current repressive regime, okay? And their repression is negligible in this situation. Obviously, they see what's gone on in Gaza, and they don't want that to fucking happen to Tehran. Are you kidding me? Who the would want that? Because ultimately, I think Felix talked about this on the last Chapo episode that I listened to with those history podcast guys, and I thought it was like a really easy summarization, easy to understand summarization, where it's like Israel will just like increasingly point to things that normal nation states have that they consider to be unacceptable. Right? They'll be like, they have ballistic missiles, like we have to take them out. It's like, yeah, of course they have ballistic missiles. They're a sovereign nation. What sovereign nation is not supposed to have ballistic missiles? They have to have anti-air defenses. What do you mean? Israel will go, that's unfair. How come they have ballistic missiles? How come they have anti-aircraft defenses? That's unfair. They have nuclear power facilities. We can't let that happen. It's like, yeah, that's a country, man. Of course they have nuclear power facilities. They have every right to have a power grid. What are you talking about? And the more that Israel gets backed up by America, propped up by the United States of America, the more they demand. Gaza is obviously the final solution of this, the final equation of this, where they go, they have running water. That's unacceptable. They have food. That's unacceptable. How dare they have food? How dare they try to eat food? We must kill them all. That's the ultimate goal here. Every country in that region, unless they are directly servile to Western interests, to American interests, to Israel's interests, will get the Palestine treatment. Okay? That's it. It's just a matter of attrition. Quickly can they do this? Do they have the capacity to be able to do this? And it's very clear that they're trying to do it all at once right now, because it feels like this is the last ditch effort of the ally or the extension of the dying empire, the United States of America. So in this entire process, as I've said before, as I suspected, Iran has been incredibly restrained, constantly trying to do diplomacy with a bunch of belligerent actors that are not invested in diplomacy at all. Their goal, obviously, is to destabilize Iran. Their goal is to dismantle Iran. And they're going to do this by using ethnic tensions in the country. They're going to do this by using the Kurdish nationalist movements that are currently outside of Iran. I'm telling you right now, watch this space. They're going to say that the Iranian Kurds have finally had it, and they're going to try to use the Kurdish nationalist movement in Iran against the Iranian state. Just you wait. But that's for the future. What I predicted initially was that the Iranian government's retaliation, the IRGC's retaliation, was going to be incredibly restrained, and even against the United States of America. After the United States bombed the nuclear facilities, okay, Iran only retaliated against Israel the first night and last night as well. And then today, they finally struck against American assets in the region. Let's take a look.
Joining us, we are looking at video from just moments ago of an Iranian missile attack on a U.S. airbase in Qatar. The Qataris have said they've intercepted that attack, but we are, of course, waiting to see and hear of any damage there. This is the largest U.S. airbase in all of the Middle East and has played a critical role in so many different conflicts, including Iraq, Afghanistan, strikes on Syria, and so forth. We are now, again, waiting to see the extent of the damage there, if any, but Qatar has said that they have managed to intercept a lot of that attack, if not all of it. And this could still play a critical role in the region. I want to go back to Colonel Steve Ganyard, who's walking us through a little bit about how this attack was intercepted and the protections at play. Actually, let's go to Rachel Scott, who's been following the reaction from the White House now. Rachel, we know the president is in the Situation Room now meeting with top leaders. Given this attack was intercepted, if there isn't a lot or any damage for that matter to the base, how much pressure is on President Trump to respond, or could he let this go?
Well, politically, this puts President Trump in a very tricky position. The president has been very clear, very direct, that any response from Iran will be met with a far greater response from the United States. But remember, President Trump, as a candidate, campaigned on getting the United States out of foreign conflict. He described himself as a peacemaker, even in his inaugural address. And so you have had this split in the Republican Party. And the president, over the last several days, I was told, was getting a series of phone calls from Republicans on Capitol Hill on different ends of the spectrum about whether the United States should get involved. Some, like Senator Lindsey Graham, urging the president for direct U.S. involvement. Others cautioning the president against it, saying that the United States needs to take a step back here and can support Israel as an ally and a friend, but doesn't need to be directly involved. We know the president's calculus on this started to change. Sources tell me that U.S. officials started to realize that Iran maybe wasn't serious about coming to the table for these nuclear talk discussions. I was also told in the last several days by sources that there was this urgent last-minute attempt to try to get Iranian officials and also U.S. officials in one room, and that President Erdogan of Turkey was trying to broker this meeting, speaking with the president directly at the G7 summit. We know that the president then ended his trip to the G7 summit in Canada abruptly. He traveled right back here to the White House, and every day...
Can you explain why you think the Kurds will play ball after being backstabbed by the West at every turn? It's because they do, okay? Because they do, and they will continue to do so. That's it.
Since then, he has been meeting with his national security team and his advisors, going over any potential threats to the United States and also the next movements here. But again, the president was very clear about this. In addition to not only warning Iran not to retaliate against the United States, we also heard from the president on social media just yesterday talking about the possibility of regime change. The president saying that it's not politically correct to use that term, but he went on to say that if the Iran supreme leader cannot make Iran great again, why not consider regime change? I had a chance to speak to the White House press secretary earlier today, and I asked her, what did the president exactly mean by that? Is he calling for the United States to get involved to accomplish that? Is he calling for Israel to get involved to accomplish that? Or is he talking about the Iranians? And she was very clear with me that the president was speaking about the Iranian people, saying that it's up to them to decide if they want to rise up to tackle that regime if they don't come to the table for diplomacy, Diane.
Rachel, thank you. Andy, and I want to go back to you because we're now hearing the first reaction from Israel to this attack.
Yeah, that's right. This was a spokesman for the chief spokesman for the Israeli Defense Forces, General Effi Defrin. He was asked about Iran's attacks on U.S. bases, saying that we're following developments that are being reported. We are in touch with our partners in the region. And of course, Israel regards this as more proof of the violence, that Iran is a terrorist state that threatens not just Israel, but the region and the world. We're also hearing from Bahraini state television that they have closed their airspace. The Interior Ministry in Bahrain, which of course is her fleet,
Bro, they moved all the troops. They already said ahead of time that they were going to strike Qatar. It's a symbolic prize. The reason why the markets are up is because this was a de-escalatory retaliation. If the markets are up because they were worried that the Strait of Hormuz was going to be mined. If Iran shut off the Strait of... Iran has options in terms of retaliation here. The maximalist position would have been to continue bombing with long-range ballistic missiles Israel, using their short and medium-range and older munitions on American bases, shutting off the Strait of Hormuz, the 33-kilometer area that 20% of all global oil and a shit ton of commerce goes through. Okay, and then maybe even activate whatever remains of like the Hezbollah missile capabilities on Israel as well. That is the maximalist position, and Yemen, of course, as well, would be striking against American positions and also Israel with whatever capabilities they have. That is the maximum position, or well, I guess the one position above that is directly lighting oil refineries on fire. Okay, this, of course, would have made it. This would have, of course, nuke global trade in its entirety, right? So that was the maximum retaliation. And any other part of that, any component that you remove from that is going to be obviously less severe. This right here, what they did was basically the most limited version where you save face. It's like a save face counterattack because you have to do something because you're a nation state. You're a proud nation state. You're a nation state that has an interest in like defending your own national sovereignty. You have to retaliate. Okay. And the retaliation was largely symbolic. Okay. The retaliation was largely symbolic. It's not a real deterrence at all, considering that Israel has refused to back down from the largely symbolic retaliations that Iran has engaged in so far. And America obviously is the top dog in the region. Okay. And I said that they were most likely going to eat it. They were going to tank the damage. They were going to say the facilities were not that damaged. There's not a state of disrepair. You only gave us a little bruise. It's fine. And we will continue to try and retaliate options that we have with the hopes that they can get away, and America will actually come back to the bargaining table and negotiate and maybe even leave Iran alone. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that this is in America's plan. I think this is certainly not in Israel's plan. Israel's made that clear. So I do think this is most likely a mistake, but we shall see. As I suspected, the generals who were in Trump's ear about how this at most would resemble the post-Soleimani assassination retaliation may have been correct, significantly limited, even if the target is a higher price symbolically. 3 Iranian officials familiar with the plans, said that Iran gave advance notice to Qatari officials that attacks were coming as a way to minimize casualties. The officials said Iran symbolically needed to strike back at the U.S., but at the same time carry it out in a way that allowed all sides an exit ramp. They described it as similar strategy to 2020, when Iran gave Iraq heads up before firing ballistic missiles at an American base in Iraq following the assassination of its top general. Iran also said, according to the Associated Press, that the missile barrage on Qatar was the same number of bombs used by the U.S. on its nuclear sites, signaling a likely desire to de-escalate. The problem here is this is not in Israel's plan. Israel very clearly does not want de-escalation. Israel very clearly does not want the Iranian state to exist. All you are doing at this stage is basically telling the powers in the region that they can do whatever they want to you as they're doing it to you. Okay, they can do whatever they want to you, and you're never actually going to make them recalculate this decision. Israel has time and time again proven to every country that is paying attention in its neighborhood, in its backyard, that the only way that Israel stands down is if they are forced to stand down, if the cost is too much. Lebanon is the best example of this, of course. Israel invades Lebanon, Hezbollah pushes them back, too many troops die, too many Israeli occupying force, diaper force troops die, they have to recalculate, they have to inevitably pull out, okay? Israel has never, ever backed away, unless America told them to. Israel has never backed away from further military incursion and further land grabs unless they are forced to stand down. Okay? Hasan, given your accurate calls on geopolitics, you should be trading oil. Yeah, I'm going to not do that, I think. Okay? Sorry if you already said. When did the Iran striking U.S. base happen? I just got here. It happened this morning. Iran this morning or last night struck Israel again. And then this morning, Iran struck Bahrain and Qatar and I think Iraq as well. Like they struck U.S. bases in the region, basically.
Essentially issued an order advising people to stay at home. Now, no indications that anything has happened there, but it's just worth reiterating that the concerns about what just happened in Qatar are not just felt in that country, but I think throughout the Gulf region. But again, just to be very clear, we need to know whether any of these got through. A U.S. official speaking to ABC News has essentially said that the Qataris and the Americans were involved in the shoot-downs. They're also saying that they don't think any of those projectiles landed in Al Udeid Air Base. Interestingly, Press TV, which is the pro-Iranian or Iranian government television, is claiming that they did land there, but no evidence of that.
And what more are you hearing about the way these missiles were intercepted?
Well, again, this has come from U.S. officials. We know that the Qataris have basically U.S. Air defense systems, and of course the U.S. base at Al Udeid has some as well.
And are other assets in the region as protected as this airbase is, or are they more vulnerable?
Well, this is an extraordinarily protected airbase because this is the nerve center, as we've been.
Yeah, the base in Qatar is a U.S. CENTCOM. Like, that is where their operations are being conducted. So it's very different from like the one in Iraq. The base in Iraq, you can just lob missiles at. You'll blow up a couple buildings. They probably will move. I think they did in 2020 when Iran said ahead of time that they were going to hit the bases in Iraq. They moved their troops away. They moved a lot of the equipment away so that they wouldn't get hit. It's symbolic. Trump has literally done this with Syrian bases in the past as well. Okay, you are pronouncing Qatar wrong. You keep saying Qatar lol instead of Qatar. I think I'm gonna ban people going forward that just keep hyper focusing on this. Not only are you wrong, but you're annoying and stupid. Please stop. You said Israel does not want this current situation to de-escalate, but you also say they only respond to force. Wouldn't a limited strike such as this only embolden them instead of retaliation? Yes. Qatar. How is it said in Turkish? Qatar. We say Qatar. Anyway, this is so stupid. I can't believe we're hyper focusing on this. What is happening? Do you think Qatar will respond? No, they will not. What the fuck? What? No. If anything, when Israel struck the joint collaborative natural gas fields that Iran and Qatar have together, that was something worthy of significant retaliation to Israel, not to Iran. No, they're not going to. I don't think they're going to respond to Iran. This is not about Qatar anyway. This is about America. The real question is, will America respond? But as I said, judging by what Iran has done thus far, both in 2020 and also in the tit for tat back and forth, Operation True Promise 1, Operation True Promise 2, and now even Operation True Promise 3 between Iran and Israel, I said that their response was going to be an off-ramp, and it seems to be the case. Now, will America take this as an opportunity to actually back off from Iran? Will they? I don't think so, because I think that America has completely fucking given the command structure to Israel at this point. You have the horniest, most violent generals possible in Trump's ear. And also on top of that, you got constant phone calls coming in from Israel that actually sully whatever kind of negotiation process that Trump might have actually been working on. All this evil to our enemies because they are bad. In any case, Iran's Khamenei says, we didn't aggress anyone and we will not accept any aggression from anyone under any circumstances. Not that it's all too meaningful. Let's continue with this report.
Talking about for U.S. Central Command. So we know that the attacks on the Iranian nuclear facilities, the flights would have been coordinated out of this base. So it's a very, very critical base. And of course, they don't speak to the security of other bases, but you can guess that this one is probably better protected than others. And that does raise concerns for other spots. And we are just hearing, Diane, that there have not been any impacts with this attack in Qatar. We are hearing that they are not tracking casualties at this time. So certainly, I think many people are breathing a sigh of relief because the hope is that this will be contained and will not escalate further. But again, as everybody likes to say, the enemy does have a vote in that. And we don't, we have to wait and see how the Iranians calculate all of this, Diane.
And Rachel, of course, there are lives at stake. There's national security at stake. There's also money at stake here, particularly when it comes to oil and gas prices. How concerned is the White House about that?
Well, it's something that the White House is obviously keeping in mind and folding into their calculus as they're evaluating this ongoing situation and also tensions in the Middle East. But of course, the primary focus from the president and the administration is keeping American lives safe. And so the fact that the target here was our troops, our air base, that could possibly prompt a very sharp response from the president if he decides to move forward. And after warning consistently and repeatedly against retaliation, it does put the ball now in the court of the United States to decide how forceful they want to respond, also possibly knowing that Iran could respond again. And this is the type for tit for tat that many Republican lawmakers and even some Democrats warned about, that warned the president against. Yes, while the president has been adamant that he does not want to see Iran have any nuclear program or nuclear weapon, at the same time, there was that campaign promise that he was going to be the mediator, that he was going to be the peacemaker as well. And of course, Diane, I will tell you, all of this comes amid ongoing questions about just how much damage the United States was actually able to do to Iran's nuclear facilities. We heard from the president saying that they were totally and completely obliterated.
Yeah, the other thing that I talked about earlier is that, like, there is very limited success to how much damage that they've actually been able to put on the facilities themselves, especially considering that Iran had already, prior to the strike, a week prior to the strike, had already talked about how they had moved their enriched uranium, which is not that massive of a stockpile to begin with, that you can easily move around, to a secret facility, or to numerous secret facilities, as a matter of fact. So this is by America's estimation, they can just use that as another reason to continue striking Iran, or to let Israel continue striking Iran, to be like, oh, well, I guess we didn't actually thwart their nuclear ambition, so we just have to go back to it. Because the ultimate goal, once again, is not the nukes. Iran does not have nukes. The ultimate goal here is to destabilize Iran. It's regime change. That's precisely the reason why they went from, oh, we don't want to do regime change. Our war is not with the Iranians. It's just with the nuclear program, to make Iran great again. Like, that's what Trump said yesterday. He's moving rapidly through the talking points, seemingly with no real interest of maintaining any kind of consistency whatsoever. They don't care. No one is going to check them, basically. There's no Democrat that will come out and be like, why are we doing this? There's no coherent voice. There's no coherent and consistent, clear anti-war voice in the country. The people are united on this. They don't want war with Iran. That much is clear, but that doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't really matter because there's no real democratic process on this, especially when it comes to foreign policy. That's it. You got Marjorie Taylor Greene, I will admit. You have Bernie Sanders. You have AOC. You have Thomas Massie. You have 60 total politicians in the country that even want to abide by the constitutional powers given to Congress to at least make this a process that is legal in the books, to demand congressional approval before Trump does stuff like this. But that's it. Democrats themselves are only talking about how this is illegal, right? They're talking about the legality of it, and not necessarily talking about the anti-war framework either. For most of the Democrats, they're like, why didn't we get congressional approval? Why are you not letting us in on this? Why were, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries basically talking about how, there is good cause. There is good cause to do this, but why won't they? Why won't they actually, there is good cause to bomb Iran, but why won't you do it the legal way? Not all Dems are only talking about the illegal aspect, but if you oppose the war itself, it's fine to also point that it's illegal. Yeah, no, I agree. One of the things I wanted to talk about also was the Democrats, their response, the back and forth that's going on. It's very frustrating because I see a lot of stuff like this. I said last night, while I believe Kamala would also bomb Iran, this isn't about winning an argument. It's not about moral superiority. I don't know, because I see a lot of people posting on the timeline like, oh, y'all gonna learn today, you should have voted for Kamala Harris, like she would have never done this. And that's not even true, because Kamala Harris would have absolutely done this as well. Foreign policy is uniparty, but I don't care, because Kamala Harris isn't the president right now. Okay? If you want to know what Kamala Harris would do in this process, she's alive. She didn't die. She has access to Twitter. She could just say that this is unacceptable if she thought that it was unacceptable. Why has she said nothing? Something to consider for all the Kamala, for all the people who want to dick ride Kamala and act like she would do something different. Okay? What do you think? You think she's in a cave, trapped in a facility, no internet access? No, she's here. She's around. She has made very little statements. In any case, that doesn't matter because Trump is the president. So if you actually are anti-war, I said I welcome every liberal or Republican who joins anti-war protests with open arms. Every dollar spent on weapons to kill children overseas should be spent on our children's education, food, healthcare, and housing. Okay? And this person goes, yes, the candidate from the party that championed the JCPOA to end Iran's nuclear program and campaigned on bringing it back would have bombed Iran too. Leftists have actually become so dense as concrete they can't stand it anymore. Dog, I don't know if you know this, but the vice president at the time when the JCPOA was implemented became the president. Did you know that? Joe Biden, who was vice president when Barack Obama did the JCPOA, which I always give Barack Obama props for, by the way. One of the few things that he did in terms of foreign policy that was actually good. Okay, he didn't bring it back. He didn't bring it back. And there's a reason why Brett McGurk, who was the chief architect of Barack Obama's Middle East policy and one of the most consequential decision makers in the Gaza genocide, has been glazing Trump up and down every day at CNN. It's because they set the stage for this to happen. The idea that this was going to, the idea that like, if Democrats were in charge, they would have never actually listened to Israel and struck Israel to strike Iran is so stupid when every Democrat that was working in the Biden administration is saying this was a good idea. And all of the establishment Democrats are basically only complaining that they were not informed on this, even though they keep saying that the cause, the reason for attacking Iran is actually just manufacturing consent for going to war with Iran. These guys are just trying to do propaganda for a party that is actively communicating the opposite thing that they believe should be the case. I don't understand it. I don't know where this comes from. Like, I think this is a silly way to approach the subject because I think you're like a little embarrassed. You want the Democrats to be better, and I understand that, right? What we need to do is ensure that Iran never achieves its ability to be a nuclear power. Not only did she refuse to suggest the use of any military action, but she reiterated many times that she bring back the JCPOA as the primary strategy to stop Iran from getting nukes. It doesn't matter because Biden didn't do that. And Biden, as a matter of fact, set the stage for Israel to be able to strike Iran. I don't understand why these guys are operating on this like operating on this assertion that is just designed not around what the Democrats are saying, not around what the Democrats have done, not around what the Democrats choose not to say in this moment, but instead on some kind of like some kind of fantasy that the Democrats are actually anti-war. The problem that they don't understand is that the Democrats are not in power right now. I understand that. I get it. So if you're actually anti-war, if you're really anti-war, okay, demand that the Democrats put out better statements. Instead of trying to actively run defense for the Democrats at a time when there is unprecedented unpopularity towards war, they're not doing that. They're acting as though there is already an election happening right now in this very moment, and they're literally doing the same thing that they did with Kamala Harris. Instead of demanding that Kamala Harris actually communicate her policies during the election cycle that took place just now, they would just defend Kamala Harris's policies that she wasn't even advocating for. I don't understand why you would do that. Just don't you think it's a much more productive use of your time to tell your elected representatives that they should take a stronger anti-war position? Don't you feel like that would allow them to look good? Even from a purely cynical, cold, and calculated perspective. Here's what the Dem leader Hakeem Jeffries is doing right now. Asked if he supports the Ro Khanna War Powers Resolution, haven't taken a look at it. And, you know, ContraPoints posted some stuff. If the Dems won, Libs would be at brunch right now, blah, 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 blah. I don't really care about the back and forth between like leftists being like Kamala Harris would be so much worse or Kamala Harris would be just as bad, unless you're making a point about how we have to demand more from our elected representatives on the Democratic Party side. Okay? Unless that is your goal. Anyway, I said, I don't think it's far-fetched to listen to what Kamala has said on Iran or Israel and what she's chosen not to say post-election as the Dems' current leadership refuses to use the 85-5 issue of going to war with Iran to their advantage, even in a calculated, cynical, and partisan way. ContraPoint's response, she supported the JCPOA. There's no way she would have ordered a preemptive strike like this without congressional approval. She's far from perfect, obviously, but the assertion that she's no different from Trump on this is self-soothing leftist cope. There's no way she would have ordered a preemptive strike like this without congressional approval. Is it the congressional approval that's the problem? Or is it the preemptive strike on Iran the problem? Homie can't math? No, it's 85.5 because it's literally 85.5 and the 10% is unsure. 85% says no war with Iran. 5% says yes to war with Iran. 10% is unsure about war with Iran. The idea that the Democrats would also not hold on. I saw baby F. Hold on. I'm going to track it. I'm going to track it real quick. I have a ping thing on the side. There was a little bit of an F. I know. There was a little bit of a drop frame on my end. The idea that the real issue here is that Kamala Harris would at least get congressional approval is silly. That's not the real problem. The real problem here is that we're striking Iran at all. What will the king of the idiots do next? I don't know. Are you talking about Donald Trump? I can't tell if this is like a hater coming in here to talk shit about me or if it's like probably a hater coming here to talk shit about me instead of talking about Donald Trump. Israel and the U.S. have been practicing it for a year. Biden and Harris did nothing to constrain Israel. Why are you posting about a defeated and irrelevant candidate? Who cares? Kamala is not president. The discourse is stupid. The discourse is only productive if people who genuinely have this anti-war position recognize that they need to apply pressure to their elected representatives to also make a big fuss about this and communicate their anger and resentment in the correct way. Either to do so from a cynical, cold, and calculated partisan way, or because they truly think it's abhorrent to engage in war like this. Do you understand? Because just like I said during the campaign over and over again, that taking a anti-Israel position as Israel was doing an ethnic cleansing campaign in Gaza and separating yourself from Biden in this meaningful way would have actually yielded tremendous benefit. Even if you didn't care about the morality of the situation, you should have at the very least communicated that you were interested in peace, specifically to win the election. The Democrats, Kamala Harris's campaign, couldn't even get themselves to do that. And it wasn't about the popularity or the unpopularity at all. It was very clearly a popular position. It would have been a beneficial position. I don't understand why. F'd again? Micro F again? Mini F again? Okay. Do you think her going on Joe Rogan would have helped? I mean, there's so many things that she could have done that could have been helpful, but that's besides the point. The reason why I'm bringing this up, also, there was another thing that I wanted to talk about here as well. This is more proof that, from the Israel is now running the show camp. This is from Middle East Eye. The truth is that by attacking Iran, Netanyahu's main objective is to overthrow the government, create instability in the country, and turn Iran into a failed state and then break it apart. This is from Sayed Hossein Mousavian. And this was the important part about this. The summarization is, Iran says that Witkoff agreed to a deal that would allow Iran to retain civilian uranium enrichment. But then a phone call between Trump and Netanyahu led to a 180-degree shift in the U.S. position, with Trump suddenly demanding the total shutdown of Iran's uranium enrichment. Lobbying from Mark Levin, Rupert Murdoch, and Ike Perlmutter also played a significant role in convincing Trump to sabotage Witkoff's negotiations and set impossible terms, as the pressure from Iran hawk CIA Director John Ratcliffe and Israel-aligned CENTCOM Commander General Kurilla. Okay? General Kurilla is the psychopath that has been in Donald Trump's ear being like, we should do it. We should just keep striking. Ironically, the attack came after Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff and Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi agreed that the first 3 rounds of nuclear talks in Oman and Italy could be a credible base for an agreement. An informed Iranian source told me the key elements of the deal between Witkoff and Araghchi were agreed upon over 3 rounds of negotiations in Muscat and Rome. The deal was as follows. Iran would accept maximum nuclear inspections and transparency, including implementation of the additional protocol and the subsidiary arrangements Code 3.1, the highest international mechanism for inspecting a country's nuclear program. The source added, Second, Iran would convert or export its existing stockpile of 60% enriched uranium, which is sufficient to build 10 nuclear bombs. Third, Iran would halt its current high-level enrichment at 60% and 20% and reduce it to the level of civil purposes, which is 3.67%. Finally, Iran would fully cooperate with the International Atomic Energy Agency to resolve all technical ambiguities. In return, the United States would lift the nuclear-related sanctions, the ones that Donald Trump reimposed on Iran after throwing away the JCPOA. It was agreed that the technical teams of both sides would draft a final agreement based on these 4 points. But suddenly, after a call between Netanyahu and Trump, the American side stopped sending its technical team to Muscat and, in a 180-degree shift in its position, demanded the complete shutdown of Iran's peaceful enrichment program. The shift delayed the agreement until Trump's 2-month deadline expired. And while the 6th round was set for day 63, Israel launched an attack on Iran on day 61. This was Israel's trap, designed to drag the U.S. and Trump into a war with Iran. There's two different schools of thought here. Okay? Is American foreign policy now entirely designed around Israel's ambition in the region, or is Israel simply the attack dog that America uses in the region to fulfill their grand design for this resource-rich area? Okay? Iran being the final castle standing as a sovereign nation that actually has the capacity to, at times, function in the region. It's both. It's certainly both. One cannot exist without the other. Okay? One cannot exist without the other. If Israel did not play a formative role in America's designs as an extension of U.S. empire in the region, then Israel would not have access to this level of influence. And under the Trump administration, it is clear, and under the Biden administration as well, under Trump 1 and then Biden and then Trump 2, Israel has taken up more and more of this role of being the tip of the spear that also is holding on to the steering wheel of American foreign policy in the region. That's what this is. And I think that American foreign policy being uniparty in this process, considering that every Democrat, like most of the Democrats, all of the high-level Democrats, most of the Democrats, and the entire Republican Party is always going to entertain going to war with Iran, as they have for decades at this point. With the only time where like negotiations and diplomacy was the most effective outcome, ironically, under the Barack Obama administration. It is clear to me that this is turned into a belligerent campaign that is either today or tomorrow, or maybe a couple years down the line, depending on how this situation escalates or de-escalates. The final goal is still clear: complete destabilization, regime change, and if not regime change, just creating a failed state. As a Trump supporter, I want to say that I'm shocked that he hit first. I'm currently trying to be more informed on other viewpoints. What do you think will be the outcome of these attacks on a non-biased viewpoint? I mean, if the goal is regime change, like I said, and I think it is, then this de-escalation, this like incredibly limited retaliation, where Iran has to save face as a sovereign nation, and it has to like against American assets. If Trump uses that as a reason to say, "Oh, we're going to war with Iran. They hit our boys. This is fucking unacceptable." If they use that as an opportunity, then yeah, we're going to a fucking extended, long, drawn-out conflict with a nation of 92 million people that is a natural fortress that makes it incredibly difficult to do boots on the ground warfare. It's either going to look like a Libya-style situation where they try to activate the sectarian forces within the country, whether it's like some of the Azadi forces, some of the royalists, and also the Kurdish forces, to the best of their ability, and try to like create destabilization. It's either going to look like Syria, or it's going to look like Libya, or it's going to look like Iraq. There are already There are examples of American destabilization efforts in the region. I mean, we've experienced them. We've talked about them. We have watched them unfold. All of them are bad, of course. I mean, look at these countries that we're talking about. They're all fucking devastated. And what's even crazier here is that there isn't a lot of appetite for all of this from the American public broadly. They don't want this. They don't want another fucking Vietnam. They don't want another Iraq. Oh shit, that's a big, Iran has officially responded to our obliteration of their nuclear facilities with a very weak response, which we expected and have very effectively countered. There have been 14 missiles fired, 13 were knocked down, and 1 was set free because it was headed in a non-threatening direction. I am pleased to report that no Americans were harmed and hardly any damage was done. Most importantly, they've gotten it all out of their system, and there will hopefully be no further hate. I want to thank Iran for giving us early notice, which made it possible for no lives to be lost and nobody to be injured. Perhaps Iran can now proceed to peace and harmony in the region, and I will enthusiastically encourage Israel to do the same. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. We got a 10-year-old doing foreign policy. Yes. I mean, he has the brain of a 10-year-old, and it seems like Donald Trump is also eating it. I don't think Israel will like this, though. I think what Israel will continue to do is probably escalate the intensity of his strikes in Iran that provokes more of a response. We shall see what happens. I think Iran striking Israel first after the nuclear facilities were bombed by America instead of immediately bombing America was a smarter option. But yeah, it seems, at least judging by what Trump says, even though Trump is so unstable in the way that he communicates and obviously doesn't shy away from lying over and over again, it seems like Trump is taking the off-ramp. He's basically, making fun of Iran in the process, but it seems like maybe the American involvement won't go beyond this point. I don't know. But in any case, unless Trump tells Israel to stand down, this is obviously going to continue because Israel's goal here is to turn Iran into a failed state. I don't think it's because Trump saw the poll numbers, chatters. Foreign policy is not dictated by the democratic process, the democratic forces in this country. And yes, right on time. Israel says it will increase the pace of bombing in Iran in order to persuade Iran to end a war that Israel started against Iran. According to Khan News, Israel's Channel 11, military correspondent Itai Blumenthal reports that the Israeli defense establishment has set a goal to end the war against Iran by the end of the week. A senior Israeli security source reportedly told him, in the coming days, Israeli attacks will be as intense as possible to set the tone and force of Iran to stop. There you go. I don't think a lot of people are recognizing how much damage Iran is doing to the Israeli security, the notion of like, hold on, what is happening with this camera? Okay, there it is. Like, if Iran continues to lob ballistic missiles at Israel, disrupting trade in Israel, disrupting normal life in Israel, that is billions of dollars of commerce being disrupted on a daily fucking basis, or millions of dollars of commerce, and potentially billions of dollars in general. The Israeli economy cannot continue living under constant threat of ballistic missiles. Israel has to stand down at a certain point. If this is the maximum amount of American response and Israel continues to escalate the bombing campaigns and the intensity of the bombing campaigns in Iran, and Iran continues its ballistic missile launches directly towards Israel at a time when Israel's anti-air defense capabilities are seemingly diminished, and we don't know what their stockpiles look like. We don't know what their capacity looks like. We don't know what the runway looks like. What we can simply make assessments off of is strikes, impact sites, and how successful they have been. For the last, I would say, 76 hours, Iran had greatly limited its ballistic missile launches. Yesterday was different. They showed that they still do have the capacity to consistently send ballistic missiles, not just to the U.S. bases in the region, of course. That's not what I'm talking about, because those are medium range and short range ballistic missiles that they fired. I'm talking national policy. It's one of the few good anti-war think tanks. And I'm going to read his assessment that he wrote for The Guardian, that he summarized on his Twitter page. The U.S.-Israeli war in Iran isn't a strategic masterstroke. It's a desperate gamble that risks catastrophic escalation. Okay? Sina writes, his latest for The Guardian on why coercion is failing, diplomacy is the only way out, and how Netanyahu is playing Trump. The U.S.-Israel strikes on Iran, targeting nuclear and military sites, infrastructures, and state symbols, aren't a strategic game changer. They're a bid to prop up a failing regional order built on Israeli dominance, but the plan risks greatly backfiring. Netanyahu steamrolled Trump into this escalation. The timing just before the next round of U.S.-Iran talks, this was a trap, another Middle East conflict serving Bibi's agenda, not America's. I do think that Israel took over the steering wheel before the negotiations happened, though, for the record. I think that when Benjamin Netanyahu came to the United States of America, this is the plan that they whipped up together. I don't think that Benjamin Netanyahu, over Trump somehow, and Trump genuinely was interested in negotiating with Iran. I think he convinced Trump that he could maybe even have a upper hand in the negotiations process if they were to engage in a dual strike on Iran and all of their nuclear facilities, and was able to convince him that these nuclear facilities had to be struck, and they were able to convince Trump that they would be able to effectively dismantle the regime. Iran's response has been swift and costly. Missiles are piercing Israel's defenses, exposing major vulnerabilities, and landing hits on military and intel targets. This is true. Tehran also anticipated the Fordow site, removing key equipment and material beforehand. Even U.S. officials now admit neither site nor enriched uranium stockpiles are destroyed, as we covered as soon as the impacts happened. The truth, Iran's nuclear program is designed to survive such attacks. Fully and verifiably destroying it would require a ground invasion, another Iraq-style disaster. These attacks aren't eliminating the nuclear program. They're making it covert and compelling Iran to weaponize. Regime change, a fantasy, at least the kind that U.S. and Israel want. The surprise attack has unified most Iranians, not behind the Islamic Republic, but against foreign aggression. Netanyahu's bet on Reza Pahlavi only highlights how out of touch the regime change project is. The Trump administration is seemingly in a state decision-making paralysis. Some officials like J.D. Vance wants talks to address fissile material stockpiles, an implicit admission that the war has failed. But diplomacy can't work under bombs and assassinations. Iran's nuclear program isn't a march to the bomb. It is a calibrated hedge, a deterrent. And it has advanced because of pressure and threats, not despite them. The U.S. must stop outsourcing Iran policy to an Israeli government that wants endless war and for America to be bogged down in the Middle East on its behalf. That means ending blind deference to an Israeli government that is a strategic liability. Washington needs a strategy based on regional balance, not blind support for Israel's destabilizing and quixotic quest for supremacy. Bottom line, bombs will always fail to remake the Middle East. If the U.S. wants stability, it must choose realism over the current path leads only to more war. My full analysis here on The Guardian. So will that happen? Congratulations, world. It's time for peace. I'd like to thank the highly respected Emir of Qatar for all that he has done in seeking peace for the region. Regarding the attack today at the American base in Qatar, I am pleased to report that in addition to no Americans being killed or wounded, very importantly, there have also been no Qataris killed or wounded. Thank you for your attention to this matter. U.S. doesn't want stability in the region, not the military-industrial complex or oil companies. No. U.S. wants stability in the region under their control. That is the only kind of stability that they want. They do not want stability in the region that allows there to be an Iranian sovereign state. And, or rather, if there is stability in the region with a sovereign Iranian state, that goes against Israel's ambitions in the region. The only way to get that is by either developing a puppet state for Iran or completely crippling the state enterprise, completely destroying any chance of an Iranian state to exist. A senior Iranian official told CNN Iran views calls for a temporary ceasefire as a ploy to assess Iran's willingness to continue the war. Ne? Ha, 3. Evet, siz kapatabilirsiniz sizin klimayı. It's very obvious we just need Iran to change leadership to join the real world. Brother, this is an incredibly silly assessment because if Iran was led by woke people instead of the Islamic Republic, but they still actually wanted to be a sovereign state, and not play ball with Israel, do you think that that would be acceptable? Like if Iran was not led by a puppet, but instead still a complete sovereign state, do you think America would be like, well, they're letting gay people live now without like forcibly transing them, you know? I guess that's fine. Do you think that's the reason why America's bombing Iranian nuclear facilities? What are you, crazy? If you don't know anything about Iranian history, then you can maybe make this assessment. Iran was a secular democracy when America said, we don't like that actually. A secular democracy with sovereignty. And American and British forces did not like that because they wanted to nationalize their oil reserves. They had every right to do so. And that went against their material interests in Iran. So they did a fucking coup and they put a monarch. They installed and calcified the power of this monarch. And the monarch was so unpopular that there was a tremendous amount of resistance against it. And therefore, the CIA trained the Savak forces of the monarch to basically do a torturous, despotic regime that got so frustrating and bred so much resentment that it led to the revolution. People talk about the Iranian Revolution, not realizing that 1953 is even more significant than this. The Iranian Revolution was an inevitability. Okay, was an inevitability due to the despotic regime of the Shah. It was an inevitability after the coup in 1953. Balkanizing Iran just means Israel bombs all factions that don't suck its cock. Yeah.